With some sage and some other things in here just to guard me from the evil spirits. And then I was gifted this, which is the grizzly bear. I was gifted this yesterday when I got my traditional ceremonial pipe.
But on Wednesday, 3 Algonquin First Nations sent out a press release. It condemned the Freedom Convoy and the ceremony which took place on their unceded territory. The head of one of these First Nations says what King and others are doing is nothing short of cultural appropriation.
This is no different than some people just claiming to be Native, like Michelle Latimer. Pat King is just following the same footsteps as people who are just self-proclaiming and just saying, oh, I have Native ancestry. We hear that so much, and it's totally wrong for people to just assume and just say those statements because it's hurtful.
On Thursday, the Truckers' Convoy held a press conference. Tamara Leach is another of its leaders.
Instead, they are using you, the media, to portray us as racists, misogynists, and even terrorists. As a woman with Métis heritage, a mother and a grandmother, I am offended.
Both King and Leach say the convoy movement has been misportrayed by both the media and Justin Trudeau's Liberals. They insist it is both open-minded and tolerant. King claims to come from Ojibwe heritage and says he has strong ties to the Indigenous communities. But APN did ask him about racist flags flown earlier in the week.
Those are paid provocateurs probably put in here by Trudeau. He does it all the time.
You're not, so they're not part of your...
No, never have been. We don't promote that, we don't stand by that, and we never will.
They say they won't leave the nation's capital until all vaccine mandates are lifted. Their numbers are expected to swell once again this coming weekend. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Well, Chief Arvel Looking Horse is a spiritual leader and 19th generation keeper of the sacred pipe in Dakota Territory. He spoke to APTN from his home in South Dakota, part of the tribal territory which also extends into Canada. Looking Horse has been vocal in the fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline and says convoy protesters using the sacred pipe on Parliament Hill hurt him. He says the pipe is so sacred it's like the Bible and should not be used as part of a political statement.
I would go back to the law of the Chanupa, the pipe. Only the good shall see the pipe. The bad should not even see it or touch it. And you have to go through ceremony to address, if you're going to address with the pipe. No, it's so sacred that people don't use that pipe in a political way.
We want to hear what you think about this ongoing protest, both in Ottawa and Coutts, Alberta. Here's how to continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website at aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. 5 days without clean drinking water and counting. That's what the Atikamekw community of Manawan in Quebec is currently dealing with. And without a quick fix, community leaders say they may have to evacuate. Our Lindsay Richardson has more.
What happens when the water main providing for 2,500 people shuts down? Well, in Manawan First Nation, 250 kilometers north of Montreal, it means no school, no showers or running tap water, and a possible worsening of a COVID-19 outbreak.
Si le niveau d'eau reste trop bas trop longtemps, mais ça risque d'entraîner des problématiques encore plus graves, puis plongerait encore la Manawan dans une situation de crise prolongée.
Manawan's chief, Paul Emile Ottawa, held a public briefing this morning on day 5 of the outage. Water delivery by truck has been delayed. A recent snowstorm forced at least one truck to flip over en route. So far, the community is distributing bottled water to its members while the problem gets sorted out, or at least gets identified.
It's somewhat complicated because we're going to get I believe we're going to get a clearer picture once we have a camera within the well to take a look at everything. So it's a little premature right now to determine the exact cause.
The community is currently reporting more than 70 cases of COVID-19. Not the worst seen since the beginning of the pandemic, but an outbreak that could grow if hygiene declines. 14 elders have been evacuated so far.
Les aînés, ils vont bien. Ils paniquent pas devant cette situation-là. Tu sais, ils s'arrangent, puis ils sont. Quand on leur a annoncé qu'on devait les relocaliser, ils étaient un peu réticents, mais finalement, ils ont dit que OK, pour qu'ils aient accès aux bains puis tout ça, tu sais, c'était mieux.
Ottawa says pregnant women or other vulnerable members could be the next to evacuate if things don't improve. He's counting on Indigenous Services Canada to continue pitching in as the investigation goes on, because Manawan simply can't afford the repairs or improvements needed.
Ils comprennent très bien que la facture va finir sur leur bureau.
APTN News reached out to ISC in an email for details. While that email was received, we didn't hear back from them before deadline. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
Thanks, Lindsay. Time to step aside for a quick break. Still to come, a new film pushing the government to act on a suicide crisis.
It's meant for government service providers to be able to safely share information for youth at risk.
Welcome back. An Indigenous police force in Alberta has taken over jurisdiction of a non-Indigenous community. Redwood Meadows was previously policed by the RCMP. Now the Tsuut'ina Police are responsible for the town of 1,000 residents just west of Calgary. Redwood Meadows is located on Tsuut'ina traditional lands. Inspector Quinn Jakes says the move reclaims traditional territory and brings pride to Indigenous policing.
When Redwood Meadows was created or conceived, Toscana or Satina Police wasn't around. So when they looked at emergency services support, the only option was really to look at the RCMP for that. Our officers are very proud of their service. And so to kind of demonstrate that pride with the new community, I think is really sustaining for them.
To the north now, where in 2015, then Nunavut Premier Peter Taptuna declared suicide a crisis in Nunavut. Since then, there have been over 200 deaths by suicide. Now, some Iqaluit students made a film encouraging the government to use their existing programs, but they haven't had much luck getting the government to hear them. APTN's Ken Driscoll explains.
These Inukshuk High School students have just completed and premiered a short film they call Communication is Key. The goal is to convince the territorial government to follow through with their 2019 Interagency Information Sharing Protocol. That's a government mandate meant to break down the barriers between departments when it comes to Nunavut's suicide crisis.
It is meant for government service providers to be able to safely share information for youth at risk.
The students offer their own ideas, like this one on the importance of services being offered in Inuktitut.
Many children or youth do express their emotions in Inuktitut way better than they do in English. And I think that would help a lot of youth trying to explain their emotions about what's going on in their life.
Their analogy? An Inukshuk, just like the name of the school. If the parts of an Inukshuk aren't working together, they're just a pile of rocks.
Picture like an Inukshuk. Before it's formed, it's merely rocks on the ground, scattered, different shapes, different sizes. It looks like nothing. But by working together, using Inuit culture as a core of service provision, you can see that each piece builds and comes together to form the Inukshuk.
The students wanted to show their film to the government of Nunavut cabinet ministers, since they're the ones that are supposed to be following the information protocol. So they invited cabinet to a premiere. Not one cabinet minister showed up. Nunavut's suicide rate is 9 times higher than Canada's average. These students are trying to lower that number any way they know how. Ken Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
Google Canada is providing a $1.5 million grant over 2 years to the nonprofit Canadian Council for Aboriginal Businesses. The council provides support for Indigenous businesses across the country. The donation will be used to provide support for businesses affected by the pandemic, like financial assistance, business digitization, and building skills in e-commerce. Council President and CEO Tabitha Bull says the money will help businesses and provide opportunities for skills growth.
Although we keep hoping that we're seeing the end of the COVID pandemic, businesses are still struggling, and we still need to be able to provide that support. And I think also it's so important to see an organization like Google step up and be a leader in this space and a leader in supporting the Indigenous economy. And that says a lot about where we're going with partners like Google.
Well, in case you didn't know, the Olympics officially kick off tomorrow. But 4 First Nations in BC want to make a bid for the 2030 Winter Olympics. And they just got a major boost. APTN's Tina House joins us for more on this story.
It's been almost 12 years since this cauldron behind me here was lit, and Vancouver and Whistler welcomed the world for the 2010 Olympics. Joining me today is Tawani Joseph, and Tawani has a very exciting update as to the First Nations bid for the 2030 Olympics. Tawani, what can you tell us about what's happened now?
Yeah, we're really excited at the Canadian Olympic Committee to sign a collaboration agreement with the 4 Host First Nations, Litwa, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, as well as the mayors of Whistler and Vancouver, to look and explore the feasibility of a concept for a 2030 Winter Olympics.
What will that mean for the city of Vancouver and the people in Whistler for economic development?
Well, I think economic development, but also at this time we've been through such difficult times as a country, and we talk about reconciliation. That's really the foundation of this TRC recommendation number 91, DRIPA, the legislation here in British Columbia, as well as UNDRIP. This is an actual living example of what we can do when we collaborate together. So hearing from all those parties, hearing from people around how we can make a better place here in this province, but in this country, I think is really the foundation of which we're moving forward.
Fantastic. Tell me about your position now. Now you're the inclusivity with the Canadian Olympic Committee. Tell me about that position and what you do there.
Yeah, so part of it also with inclusivity is from an Indigenous perspective, sharing some of our teachings and values, but also working with other groups as well, like the Foros First Nations and others, as we start to work on the 2030 concept and explore the feasibility, but also working with all cultures and all people. I think that's the important part in this country, is with being inclusive means that we need to hear and share with each other and have a dialogue with one another.
That's really exciting. Tawani, can you give us an idea of what happens now? What's the next step forward?
Yeah, the next step forward is for the nations really to move forward together with us at their leadership, and it's having the nations in a leadership position is really critical, and that's a big difference from 2010. We were partners in the games, or the nations were partners. Now they're leading this process with the Canadian Olympic and Paralympic committees as well. So the next step is to explore the possibilities of where locations could be, explore the concept, and develop a concept plan for the leading up into this spring. So that's the next step that's going to be happening right now.
That's incredible. Tawani, that's really exciting news, and thank you for joining us today. Back to you in studio.
That would be incredible. Thanks, Tina. Looks like you're having incredible weather out there as well. Jealous of that. Time for another quick break. Coming up, celebrating Indigenous storytelling.
Breaking stereotypes, through education. And it just brings people together in a collective manner.
Welcome back. Let's take a look now at our photo of the day. And Arlene Flatfoot captured this beautiful winter scenery along the Yellowhead Highway. where she says the wind-blown snow looks a bit like waves in the water. That does look like the ocean right there. Thanks, Arlene, for sharing. If you want to be our next photo of the day, email your pictures and descriptions to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at how much more snow is going to be out there tomorrow. Starting out on the East Coast, -6 in Halifax, -2 in St. John's. 24 below in Nain, -23 for Happy Valley, Goose Bay. -13 with snow in Montreal, partly cloudy and 22 below in Chibougamau. Snow and -14 in Sault Ste. Marie, sunny and -14 in North Bay. Snow and -12 in Thunder Bay, flurries and 18 below for Sioux Lookout. -26 and sunny for God's Lake and Norway House. -22 in Winnipeg, Gimli, Barons River, and Brandon. -17 with snow in Saskatoon and North Battleford. -19 and snow in Meadow Lake, snow and -23 for La Ronge. In northern Alberta, -22 with snow in High Level, 4 below with snow for Peace River. +6 in Calgary, 5 in Lethbridge. 8 above in Vancouver, 9 in Victoria. +4 with snow in Prince George, -10 in Dease Lake. -38 for Old Crow, 13 below with snow in Whitehorse. -33 in Yellowknife, 27 below in Norman Wells. -25 with snow in Sax Harbor, 33 below in Fort McPherson. -35 in Chesterfield, 37 below in Cambridge Bay. -35 in Resolute, -34 in Joe Haven. The truckers' convoy in Ottawa has dominated headlines, and it will be taking center stage on tonight's episode of Nation to Nation. Here's host Brett Forrester with more.
Thanks, Winnipeg. Well, it has been an eventful week here in the capital. Trucks continue to block parts of the city centre with their horns blasting non-stop. Tonight, I'll speak with Nipissing First Nation member Juanita McLeod. She showed up to the protest on Saturday in full regalia. Then I'll speak with educator and freelance writer Joy Henderson. She's calling out the authorities for the way they've handled what some are calling the Ottawa occupation. And Aaron O'Toole's caucus gave him the boot. What could it mean for Indigenous people? Stay tuned for an interview with Conservative MP Jamie Schmale on that topic.
Thanks, Brett. Looks like another great show. Tomorrow night on APTN Investigates, Brittany Guillot continues her look into missing and murdered Indigenous men. Here's a preview of that.
He was young and vibrant and loving, caring, and had so much potential to go so many different ways in life, Indigenous men are missing or murdered every day, and you never hear about it on the news.
There's days where I attend the marches, I attend the memorials, and I don't understand why nobody seems to be putting this at a higher level of grave concern.
We're so remiss sometimes that men don't want to talk, or men want to hold back their feelings or emotions. When we talk about our Indigenous brothers, when we talk about victims of homicide and knowing that Indigenous men are at the highest rate of being victims of homicide, where's the supports coming from police? Where's the supports coming from the RCMP? Where is the inquiries delving a little bit more into the stories behind the acts of crime?
You can watch that full story tomorrow night right here after the news, and you can find part 1 over on our website, aptnnews.ca. Well, storytelling is an age-old custom, with stories passed down by elders, knowledge keepers, and within families. And every February for the past 19 years, Saskatchewan has been celebrating Indigenous storytelling as a way of keeping the oral history tradition alive. APTN's Leanne Sanders reports.
Poets, writers, artists, and crafters will share their stories all month long at libraries around the province. Randy Morin is an assistant professor of Indigenous Studies and teaches Cree at the University of Saskatchewan. He also runs a series of workshops for kids during Aboriginal Storytelling Month.
They get to see me and learn from me. And so I'm, breaking stereotypes, through education. And it just brings people together in a collective manner.
Morin says he uses humor to help reach younger people in a positive way.
It's a very respectful way to create dialogue is through humor, right? And of course, in our languages, they're very, very descriptive. So when you translate a joke from Cree to English, it's not as funny in English as opposed to it being in Cree, Like every time I speak to my language to my friends and relatives, like the humor, the laughter is instantaneous.
But he says his main message is to be proud to be Indigenous.
I am an Indigenous person that is proud to be Indigenous, so I speak the language, and that's my message to all young people: is to be proud of who you are and where you come from.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Well, a 40-year-old mystery involving two stolen Norval Morisseau paintings from a college in Thunder Bay has been resolved. The paintings, Demigod Figure 1 and Demigod Figure 2, were stolen from Confederation College in 1981. The large paintings were donated to the college in the 1970s, as you can see there. A Toronto-based art curator who is an expert in Morisseau paintings contacted the college in 2018 to advise that an art colleague in Quebec had offered to sell her the two paintings, which she recognized as the Morisseau paintings stolen almost 40 years earlier. Police in Thunder Bay and Quebec worked on the case, although it remains unclear who stole the paintings. An unveiling is expected to take place in the spring. Quite a story. Well, that's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For news anytime or for more on anything you've seen here, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Stick around. Brett is up next with Nation to Nation. Have a great night.